Good evening, everybody. This is Patrick from the Poison Pen Bookstore, and we're here with another of our virtual events. And I'm really excited, and I've been looking forward to this event for a long time. I'm here with my good friend Ace Atkins, and we had the pleasure of doing a little chat, I don't know, a month or so ago about his killer new book, The Heathens. And so we'll be talking about that. And also, this is the first time I've ever had the pleasure of meeting Chris Offutt. We were just chatting a little bit before we got started here tonight. You know, I've been a big fan and admirer of Chris's work from, Kentucky Straight. I remember when that book came out and just what a friggin' revelation it was. And then, followed your work closely, Chris, The Good Brother, all the memoirs you've done and the short fiction. So it's a real treat and an honor to have you joining us tonight. We're going to be talking about Chris's brand new book, The Killing Hills. And I should say that Chris has signed copies of the book, and we have some of them left. And Ace, we just got him in. Ace has also kindly signed copies of his new book with this cool, we'll talk about the music too. Music is very important to Ace's world and Ace's books. And we'll talk about this very specific music that appears in this book. But I just wanted to say, welcome, you guys. It's great to have you both here.
Thanks, Patrick. Thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. I appreciate it. I also didn't get one of those little Freebird stickers, so
They're for sale in the gift shop. We'll work something out.
okay.
Can you just Ace, can you just tell the people that are watching, where you guys are and what you're looking at?
Sure. So we are here on the second floor of really the oldest building in Oxford, Mississippi. I wish I could pick up the computer and show you around, but I'd make a real mess and knock over our lighting and everything. But yeah, we're here. We're looking at the courthouse, looking out at one of our favorite bars across the street, and we're outside. And the great thing about this is that Chris and we can actually sit here together. When we talked about doing this joint event, I think, Chris, you mentioned, why don't we sit down together and do it in person? There was no reason to do this from our house. So slowly but surely, hopefully things are opening back up.
That's great. What's it like there weather-wise?
Hot, humid.
Is it bad?
I mean, it's Mississippi in the middle of July.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't get any better. It's good for the complexion.
It is. I feel lovely.
It's been pretty surreal out here in the desert, man. I mean, it's been, 110, a couple weeks ago it was 115. And we've kind of had some monsoon storms that roll in.
Flash flooding.
Yeah, there can be. This year it hasn't been too bad yet. We had a big tree in our backyard, kind of big branch crack over. They can get pretty violent, but the sunsets are just spectacular out here. Yeah.
Well, I think this is the longest I've gone without visiting you guys, the Poison Pen. So this has been quite some time. So hopefully next time, both Chris and I can make an appearance and be there in person.
Right, that'd be great.
Maybe we can go there together.
Maybe we'll take a road trip.
Yeah.
It'll be just like Thelma and Louise.
A lot like Thelma.
Yeah,
and Louise.
only with a better ending.
I think you guys would make it as far as like Beaumont, and then
we might not even make it that far.
maybe Ojinaga.
We might get to Shreveport, and
It probably would be more like, I would like to say Thelma and Louise, but if Chris and I were on the road, it would be more like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Yeah.
I don't know who would be John Candy.
That's right.
We'd figure it out.
Well, let me just kind of start our little chat here by talking, how long have you guys known each other? I know Oxford has just an incredible group of writers.
11 years.
11 years, right on. Wow.
How long, when did you come here?
I've been here since 2001, early 2001.
I moved here in 2011. Yeah. So, and Ace, I met Ace the first week I was here.
Yeah.
Bar across the street.
And we have been good friends ever since. And we do. I mean, Oxford is a strange place. I mean, we really do have a lot of great nationally known writers, and almost all of them we're all friends with. I mean, there's a couple of them we don't like. We won't name any names. There's some real jerks. We're not gonna name right now. But they're a great group of people, and many of us, with the interesting thing with with what Chris and I do, and with what your wife Melissa does, and with Tom Franklin and Bill Boyle, Michael Fair Smith, go on and on, is that a lot of it is very dark, noirish kind of outlook.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna kind of ask Chris a little bit about that. You know, being friends with this incredibly talented group of writers who happen to write in the crime genre, whatever that means. You know, I mean, what do you guys think about all this labeling of fiction? I mean, do you think, Chris, for instance, did you approach this novel any different than you would have another novel?
No, the only difference that no difference in approach in terms of structure. I've always thought that I wrote crime novels. The last two I thought were, but they weren't regarded that way. So I just thought, well, if I stick a dead body in the first 3 pages, by golly, there will be no question of what kind of book this is.
Right.
So as you ask about labels, I mean, I don't understand labels. I think they're related more to marketing.
Yep.
And the people who really like them are usually elitists. And everyone wants to pretend and ignore the fact that Cormac McCarthy received the Pulitzer Prize for a science fiction novel. Right? So that's what I think about labels. I don't think they apply.
Yeah. Right. Well, let's just get into talking a little bit about both of your new books. There's a lot of shared terrain, I think, in both the books and both your work, in some ways. Ace, let's just talk a little bit about the Heathens. I remember you saying that when we spoke, that in the last book, you know, you were kind of burning the town down, you know, and in some ways, Heathen reflected a new beginning. Heathens, with the storyline and what's going on. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, I think one of the things that nobody wants to get into in series fiction is repeating yourself and constantly doing the same thing and drawing on the same stories or the same motifs. You really want to change things up. And there had been a long story arc that I had been doing for the last 4 to 5 books. And I felt like if I repeated myself anymore, things would get very stale.
Right.
And so really that's what the Revelators was all about, was really just destroying everything, having all those story threads come to head. And I heard from numerous people after I wrote the book, which is really not my intention, which was, what a great series. You know, I'm sad it's over.
Yeah.
And they felt like it was a conclusion to everything and that I was done. And I said, well, geez, you know, I gotta take care of my family. You know, I said, Quinn Coulson's not going anywhere. I mean, this is still corruption. And crime is going to continue. So this is kind of like a rebirth book. This is kind of I don't want to say a reboot, but a good friend of mine who works over at Square Books, which I'm looking at it right now over across the street, he said this would really be a great entry point into the series. And that's what I feel like. I feel like if you read The Heathens, you're good to get moving into the next stories. So that's really what it was all about, is trying to do a little bit of reinvention and chart some new territory.
Now you burn it down at the end. Did you have a plan on what would happen, or what, did you just...
I didn't. I just knew that the things that I was really writing about, the characters, the villains, the story arcs, as far as the corruption, you know, all the machinations that were going on in Tibahaw County, I just wanted all that to end. And so this is really almost like a standalone novel.
Yeah, it forces you to start fresh.
Yeah.
But Johnny Stagg, he's out of slam, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, he's back in action, or making plans. You're right. And it's also, there's the road novel element to it as well. Yeah, sort of the Bonnie and Clyde kind of aspect.
Yeah, I mean, that's the fun thing, and that was the other thing that I wanted to do, is I've been really, you know, writing about this county in North Mississippi, and writing about all the characters in it and the world and everything. And I wanted to show that the characters could exist outside that bubble. And so that's why I took all these people on the road.
And without giving away spoilers or whatever, can you talk a little bit about the main crime that sort of gets the story going?
Sure. You know, 20 plus years ago, when I was a newspaper reporter, I covered, and I was not the main reporter. I was one of the many reporters who covered this crime, but it was a national story about a 14-year-old girl who was charged with killing her own mother. And she had a boyfriend who is 19 years old. She had another accomplice. And after the murder took place, they lit out. They went on the road. They took off. They ended up being caught in Texas. Yeah, they had a deputy sheriff shoot their tires out. And so, you know, over the 4 to 5 days, all this stuff was happening. The attention was really put upon this girl named Valessa Robinson. And I actually was there during the court trial. And anyway, it's so funny how there's stories that are right in front of your face that you don't write about. Like, that was such a great story. And I'd been in the courtroom and I followed the whole thing. I'd been, you know, and then I don't write about it until, you know, 22 years later. But it stays with you. And it's something that I want to do. So the whole premise to this, the kids were guilty and they were convicted, and they did serve time. In fact, 2 of them or one of them is still serving time. But the thing is what if they had been innocent? You know, what if they had been framed, and then they have to leave, and they have to go on this road trip, and they have to prove their innocence. And so that was the genesis of the whole novel.
And Gina Bird, you know, the mother who is murdered in a pretty horrific way.
And that's exactly the way it happened. I mean, there was she was, you know, they were trying to find heroin to inject her with. They couldn't find heroin, and so they got bleach and they injected her with a syringe full of bleach. They put her into a trash barrel. I mean, this is one of the most grotesque things. I don't know, maybe the most grotesque thing that I ever wrote about or covered. And to think about a 14-year-old kid doing this, it's hard to even fathom.
And, you know, when we were talking earlier, I said, you know, in some ways it has elements of tragedy. You know, I mean, this Gina Bird is this, you know, woman whose society is kind of just left behind or cast aside, you know, and we all know people like that, you know. She's never really able to get it together.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, and for the story is the story that I covered in Tampa. Everyone asked the question is, these people lived in a upper middle class suburb, and the question really for them was, how could a girl like this do it? And so that came the questioning of, like, I can't believe a girl that you know had money, lived in a nice house, went to a nice school, how could she do this? And then for somebody like T.J. Bird, the specter of accusation and charges come on her, like, how could she not do it? You know, that people think that she's trash and she doesn't come from anything, and of course she did it. So it was just a kind of a complete reverse of the situation.
So the bleach didn't work in real life?
The bleach did not work, and
maybe they didn't use enough, or they diluted it?
It was a mauling. It was a mauling. It was stabbing, and it was bleach, and it was one of the most, I covered a lot of grotesque things as a reporter, but it was one of the most grotesque murders I ever covered. And then to think about a 14-year-old kid orchestrating it, it's just mind-boggling.
Did it end up being cartel related? That sounds almost like. Did it end up being cartel related?
Not at all. Not at all.
It sounds like one of their staged.
No, it was all homegrown, and it was a plan that was hatched at a very nice coffee shop in suburban Tampa. So who knows?
Wow. Yeah. And then, well, yeah, Chris, let's talk a little bit about the Killing Hills. And can you tell us a little bit about where this particular story came from?
I just kind of made it up as I went along.
Yeah.
I had some ideas. The idea of a sheriff has always interested me. Particularly in the hills of Kentucky, it's isolated terrain, isolated people. There's not many towns, so there's no city police. So the sheriff has enormous law enforcement power and is an elected official. So there's always a built-in corruption level. So that had interested me for a long time. And then it was a case of, well, suppose there's a woman she's the first female sheriff. So I had to figure out how, she would never get elected. So I had to figure out how she would wind up in that situation. The other thing is, it's all set where I grew up, in about the same 4 square miles that I've been writing about for 30 years. And if somebody gets shot, half the county knows who did it and why. The other half has a pretty good idea, and
Right.
nobody's going to talk to the police or the sheriff because they're going to wait for the victim's family to take care of things, you know, to have personal retribution. It's just cultural kind of a deal there. So that was, in a way, I thought, well, then if they find a body and there's no reason why this woman was killed, then in a way, it is the first genuine homicide in county history and being investigated by the first female sheriff. So I thought this will be real interesting to write about.
Right. I mean, one of the things, you know, that's always struck me when I read your books is about, you know, just the connection to the land first and foremost. And also I don't know how to really describe it, but sort of the weight of the previous generation's entanglements and actions on the contemporary generation, you know, and how.
That's the way it is, you know, and that's part of it. It was in one way a great way to grow up because there was a safety. Everybody knew you, they knew your family, they knew everything about you. But it was also a big reason why I couldn't wait to get out, you know, because people would hold things against you for generations. And and because of the isolation, there's not that many families. And they're big families. So any trouble that comes along, if Ace and I have a difficulty, I'm going to be careful because Ace is going to have, you know, 3 or 4 or 5, 6 brothers, a bunch of aunts and uncles, a huge amount of cousins. They're all going to be laying for me out in the woods.
Is that very, very Scottish, you think, very Scotch-Irish, the grudges, the clans, the kind of stuff? Is that?
I mean, it's popular to say that, and it's popular to say that the Scots-Irish settled this, but I think it's also a product of just the cultural isolation since the 1800s. All the land was taken up by the end of the 1800s. There were no new settlers. There's no employment, so there's no reason for people to go there. And the westward expansion occurred both to the north and the south of the Appalachian region. So it just missed us, you know, and that helped preserve, I think, these traditions that run back to the 1700s and the 1800s. In addition, after the Civil War, it was a neutral state. It was right in the middle. And so neither side claimed it. So that furthered this sort of
isolation.
The isolation, but retaining the cultural values of the past. And I think they're really interesting. They're not all good, not all bad.
And what's also very striking is the language. You know, this sort of interesting mix of I don't know what to describe, Victorian language. Maybe that's not accurate, but have you noticed has that been diluted over time? Has the outside world encroached more and more on this region?
Well, sure. In the same way it has in Oxford or anywhere. The cable television was the first, and then the internet. And that brings in pop culture, and pop culture dilutes and pollutes the whole world in terms of by its common denominator lowering, you know, it's a reductive presence, and that has affected the language. It affects young people who want to copy what people are doing on the internet rather than what grandpa is doing or how grandpa talks. I think it's throughout the South, throughout the West and the Midwest and small towns everywhere. I'm sure Arizona as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So Mick Harden, he's a combat veteran, paratrooper, who's now working for Army CID. Can you talk a little bit about him and maybe a little bit about, did you have to do any research for what CID agents are doing, these contract workers? And
not really. I didn't do much research. I talked to a serving soldier here to get information on what would happen if a guy overstayed his leave, but that was about it. CID investigates violent crimes that usually are either committed on base or by a soldier in a town or off base. And when I came up with him, I just thought, okay, he's going to be some version of me from the woods, but a much tougher guy than I ever am. And who would be the toughest person of all? Like in general, it would have to be a cop in the Army whose job is to arrest 19 and 20-year-olds who are in great physical shape and trained to kill. Like, that's this guy's job. So I just thought, okay, nobody's going to be tougher than.
And I think Chris is being too modest. I mean, how many nights have we got on here on Oxford Square and just cleaned house just to prep for this? I mean, because we're very serious about our what we do. And so we'll just get out and just whip some ass just to kind of get into character.
We usually stand back to back.
Yeah.
And then slowly turn.
Yeah.
We know which way to go.
Yeah.
And take on all comers.
It is. It's just like it's like mixed martial arts.
We also fought a car once on the square.
You fought a car?
Yeah.
Yeah, an automobile that was driving by.
We just didn't like it just looked wrong to us. We just decided that's the way we do it in Mississippi.
Yeah.
We just didn't like that. It just gave us the wrong look.
Although to be honest, it did wind up more of a draw. Even though there were two of us.
It was a Hyundai. So what can you say?
Oh man. So Mick, he learns that his wife is pregnant, and gets emergency leave to come back.
Yeah.
And I don't want to give spoilers about exactly what happens here, but he's hiding out at his great grandfather's cabin, and this is at the very beginning of the book. So the setup is really great.
Well, it was just carefully worked out ahead of time to how he would be there, what would make him go there. His sister is the sheriff,
right,
and her sister is over her head investigating a homicide, and so there's her brother who can then operate outside of the law, so to speak. He doesn't have to follow any standard procedures. He also knows the hills and knows the people far better than she does. So he just was. I had a blast having him drive around and talk to people and figure out what was going on. Put him in a little peril here and there.
right.
Work out the way they're supposed to work out, and then see what he would do. Put pressure on him and watch his reactions. That's kind of how I write.
Yeah, again, I was talking about his just the connection to the land, and he's in some ways kind of reminded me a little bit of a classic tracker of old. How he can read the landscape so closely. Really, really beautifully done.
Thanks. I mean, I grew up out there. I spent most of my time in the woods. The house was not a great place to be when I was a kid. School bored the hell out of me. I read all the textbooks the first week of class, and then I spent a lot of time in the woods alone.
I mean, sometimes Chris and I are just walking around outside, and you'll pick up a piece of scat, and you'll smell it, and you'll say that's a raccoon or that's a possum.
I mean,
or that's just like a person, and we'll just keep on moving.
You don't even need to smell it.
You can just look at it.
You can tell by the shape, and then
see what I'm talking about.
You pick it up. You can tell by how hard it is, how fresh it is.
That's
how long it's been exposed to the weather.
How many book signings have we found just because of that? That's how it works.
Yeah.
It's I'm a scat man.
You got to know your scat. In Kentucky or Mississippi, you got to know your scat.
Let's see. I'm just kind of, as I'm talking to you guys, I'm just looking to see if there are any questions that are coming in, and
that's gonna stop all of it.
Yeah.
Let's see. Someone named Blue says, a question for both Ace and Chris. What's the most surprising or unexpected action or direction a character has taken in your work? Something you didn't know they were going to do until they did it.
I think for me is probably the ending, and I can't really talk about it because it was so unexpected that if anyone hasn't read this book, it'll be a spoiler. But the end of the Revelators, again, kind of trying to burn everything down, change everything, and people who were, I think may have been viewed as series characters and people who are going to be around forever, I'd be writing about, didn't remain after the book. So that was probably the most surprising thing that I've done.
I mean, I think I try to put my mind and my circumstances in a way that I'm surprised every day. I mean, I write first thing in the morning. My goal is to write 1 minute a day. I usually I double it and I triple it, so it's an achievable goal. I'm serious, and it's there's no pressure. I wind up on average with a page to a page and a half. I never reread anything. I just sit down and start with where I left off yesterday. So in a way, anything that comes out is going to be surprising. In this particular book, probably the most surprising thing that happened was, with investigations, there's always a lot of going from point A to point B to talk to somebody, always. And with most crime novels and crime narratives are set in cities. And so when they do that, there's lots of stuff to comment on. There was where the deli used to be, or, oh, there's somebody there, or there is a building designed by so-and-so. But out in the rural area, this guy is in a truck and he's got to drive 15 miles. I can't do a shortcut. So Mick picks up a guy walking. And I just thought, this is for my entertainment. I've got to get Mick from point A to point B. He picks up this guy, drives him home, and there's a mule on the man's porch. That was completely unplanned. And once there's a mule, how does he react? So I would say that chapter is one of my favorites and is also completely unplanned.
And there was moments that happen when you write about rural areas that seem fantastical to people who don't live here.
Yeah.
But then that's really not that unusual. Or I remember one time I was driving up to Memphis and there was a traffic jam because there were pigs that were crossing the road.
Right.
And that just happens. And it seems like you're trying to reach as an author, but that's just the way it is.
I never think of it as trying to reach. I think that I'm playing things down.
Yeah.
Like the reality of that case in Florida is more extreme than your novel.
There are parts of the Deep South in certain cases that I think that if we actually did, and in Kentucky, I think here in Mississippi, if we did really the dialect, the edginess of it, it would be very hard to read. And I think it may be very hard for people outside this region to follow.
I mean, the dialect is there's no way to approximate the dialect.
Yeah.
I use syntax a lot, and I'll pick 2 or 3 slang words and use them. But the only way to approximate the dialogue is by dropping, ing and adding apostrophes and all that kind of stuff, which is then, as you say, impossible to read. And then you're just reading a code and hoping for the best.
Ace, you have, we talked about this a little bit before, but you have a very memorable father and son murderer team in this new book that have appeared before a little bit. They seem like they could have crawled straight out of Flannery O'Connor or something like that. Can you talk about them a little bit?
Sure. And again, I mean, I think I keep on falling back on so many people that I knew as a newspaper reporter, and I draw upon that well of the, of folks that I knew that seem just, insane, but they really are real life people. They're really out among us, and I wish they weren't. I think I think both you and I have a pretty healthy view of human nature. We like people. We like being around people. I think inherently, I hope people are good, but there are some really evil people that walk among us, and so there's the Dusty and Flem Nicks are this father-son team of roofers, do-it-yourselfers. They'll do whatever, they'll do everything from field dress your deer to kill your mother-in-law. And these are people that walk among us, and they are definitely drawn from not only things from my experience. From I'm sorry, this is part of the excitement of doing a live stream, as opposed to being a. Here we
There's
go.
a fire truck going around the square.
Well, I wish we could see it.
So Chris has some unpaid parking tickets. They're coming for
Yeah,
him.
that's my ride.
So they're these guys that not only that relate back to people that I knew as a crime reporter, but also I'm very fortunate. I know some terrific people here in local law enforcement. I get to go out and ride with them. In fact, one of my close buddies is the sheriff of Calhoun County, which is the county south of us here. And the people that I meet and the stories that I tell and whatever, I'd like to tell you that they're totally creative, but I draw upon a lot of real life people that I meet. I mean, hell, Chris is in it. He doesn't even know, but he, that character is maybe the most unredeemable character in the entire story.
Yep.
Well, what's going on with Lily Virgil in this book? She's a U.S. Marshal now, and
The Marshal.
Well, I think that again, it's part of the idea of taking a story that has been deeply rooted in a specific place,
Right.
in a county, and then to draw it out and to do something a little bit different. And so I always felt that she was larger than just the rural county that I was writing about. And so in the last few books, it's a story that I've seeded for some time, as she's now a deputy marshal. She is, able to go everywhere. And this was really kind of the perfect story to tell with Quinn and his friend, Lily Virgil, who's a tough as nails law woman. She is salty. She is direct. In fact, there's a terrific woman here that helps me out with a lot of stuff that she is a U.S. Marshal here in town, and she is as tough and as salty as Lily Virgil. So I think all this is, again, trying to draw it out of the county and to tell something that happens throughout the entire Mid-South. So she's a fun character to write about. And I don't know, maybe someday I'll be writing a standalone book.
Well, I was going to ask, did you ever think about just giving her own book, her own series?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I wish I had more time. I would love to. I unfortunately
You have more time.
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
well, Chris, kind of on a similar tack, I really enjoyed the Linda character in the book, the female sheriff. Can you talk a little bit? Was there a real life inspiration for this character, or was she kind of a composite of people that you'd known? Or
I mean, I just Linda's the kind of woman who I always wanted for a girlfriend, and was also the kind of woman who I would be the last guy she would choose. So a lot of that's kind of how I saw her, is that she would. I really love Linda. She's strong. She's tough. She's close to her brother. She's not. One of the things about Linda that, to me, that makes her interesting is she has a fear of intimacy, and you see that commonly played out with male characters, and it's practically a trope. But you just don't see it that much with females, and I wanted to kind of explore that. And then as I was doing it, I realized they both that way. Like this guy, he's married, but he spent half his life in Europe, and Linda lives in her dead mother's house and does not have someone that she's involved with after having been involved with, many eligible men. So I just made her up as I went along, man. I mean,
I like how she was, she started out as the dispatcher, and and up against that kind of good old boy political network in town. Yeah,
she started out as dispatcher, and then they sort of appointed her to deputy, mainly because they were getting flack for not having any women in law enforcement. And then she didn't want to do it, but they gave her a raise and a car. But then the job just turned out to be mainly talking to women at crime scenes. So she wasn't actually able to do anything. And then the sheriff he just died suddenly. I forgot how he died. He just keeled over, and boom, the deputy becomes the sheriff.
Right.
And the powers that be, all the patriarchy, I mean, they do not like this. A woman with authority is a real threat. And I don't think that's confined to Eastern Kentucky.
No, I wouldn't think so. Yeah. Let's see here. You mentioned tropes. There's a question. Are there any tropes that you try to avoid in your fiction? This is a good question for both of you.
I think all of them.
Yeah.
That's why they're tropes. I mean, I make traffic in them. What's the biggest trope is the second male lead gets killed.
Yeah.
Right. So there's one.
I think that's why, yeah, for me and just drawing upon, so much truth and to draw upon real stories is because I feel like if I draw upon real stories that I can avoid those tropes,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so it doesn't mean necessarily I'm writing a true crime book.
Right.
I have written true crime novels, but I think when you try to get I think that's the really what we all try to do as a novelist. I think that, the best thing that we can do is really get to writing something that's real and try to get to real life as much as possible. I mean, I think it's, both of our goals. And in doing so, you want to, jettison all those kind of tropes and cliches, and you want to get to something that is deeply immersive.
Right. I couldn't agree more. I mean, tropes are shortcuts, and they show. So I try to avoid all of them.
Chris, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your superb book that came before this, Country Dark.
Yeah.
And it was just, I think Ace would probably agree, a really masterpiece of a novel.
Thank you.
I feel a little bit like David Spade.
Ace hadn't agreed yet. I'm
I feel
waiting.
like David Spade on a Saturday Night Live skit or something. I love you, man.
I didn't hear what you said.
It wasn't worth repeating. I said I feel like David Spade on an old SNL skit. I love you, man. But tell me a little bit about that book and how you came to write it. And
well, I know those people, and they were neighbors of mine growing up. And my initial plan was to write a 3-generation, big old fat book about how it went from community acceptance of bootlegging and moonshine making, which was community accepted. And there's multiple underground economies in the hills. A new book I've been working on has, a guy capturing rattlesnakes to sell to a church, for example. Like they got to come from somewhere, and there's a little money to be made there. So my idea was that the grandpa was in the moonshine business. His son was in the marijuana business, which then took off in the 70s and 80s. And then now there's lots of problems with opiates, and that would be the grandson. So that was the plan. But I thought I'll start with the grandpa in the 50s, and I just fell in love with this guy Tucker to the point that I never got past him. So that's how it came about. It was supposed to be the first 90 pages or 60 pages of a big work.
wow, it's awesome.
But I loved writing about him and his family, and to me it's a tragedy in a way. The novel there's a tragic element to it, whereas The Killing Hills it's the same world. Killing Hills is set in contemporary times and has more humor. I would hope anyway. It's supposed to be some funny stuff in there. Ace doesn't know. He doesn't have a sense of humor.
I'm working on it. One of these days it's going to come through. We'll see.
Can you guys are there any questions you'd like to ask each other about your books and about your writing?
I've been burning to ask this question. What is it, Chris, that you like so much about me that draws you to this event, that you love being around me, you like being a part of? What is it? Is it the sense of humor? Is it my the masculinity? Is it is it the high karate cologne?
You want me to tell the truth?
No, I don't want to.
It's $1,200.
Mm-hmm.
Like you offered me $1,200 to do this.
I know.
And
the thing is,
and I didn't negotiate. I just thought, okay, man, that's
I know.
not bad.
And well, the thing about
You
it,
know?
Chris, I was ready
But, you
to go
know.
to 2,000, and you just cashed in. You're like, I said 1,200. I said, would you appear with me? I said 1,200. And you said yes, but I mean, I was ready to go to 2,000.
Ah, maybe
But-
that extra 8 will come out of Patrick.
But Chris is a good friend, and we really do. I think one of the interesting things here in Oxford, I think, is just how many writers that we have that do have kind of a darker edge. And I don't know if is it the Faulknerian stuff that draws us here? Is it just the product of Mississippi? But what do you think it is? I mean, when you really think about the majority of writers here, what typically people think about Southern writers is not, steel magnolias, but it's a really kind of dark side of human nature. Is that just happenstance?
I mean, I think it has to do with growing up in the South.
Yeah.
And the South is very class conscious in the way that much of the rest of the country has kind of left behind. And if you're on the wrong side of that class consciousness in the South, you're going to know a few things about the dark side of life. And that's economics is primarily, and then of course in race. But what was the question?
You were explaining why you're drawn to me as an author and the work and what makes it so interesting.
The thing about this town that I find interesting is there are a number of writers here, and we're all friends.
Yeah.
There's no sense of jealousy. There's no sense of envy. There's no backbiting. There's no competition. Everybody goes out for everybody else's events, and we all get together and talk. And I've been around in other environments where there were groups of writers, and that's not always the case. That's part of what
well, I mean, I think like the other night, I did an event here in town, and we, went up to this bar. I wish you could see it.
Yeah.
It's right. We can look at it. It's right across the street. And you walk up, and they're all my friends. And virtually every writer, I won't name the people who were not there, but almost every writer in town that I knew was there just to welcome a book. And I think that is unusual, that people stop and pause just to like celebrate that there's a new book out.
Yeah,
and that's what we missed.
Yeah, it wasn't a huge crowd of people, but no, I mean in the bar but
you didn't see my groupies.
I didn't see the entourage on the side, but I mean 2/3 of the people who were there were the writers who were there for Ace.
Very supportive people.
Yeah.
Very, very supportive.
And I like that.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, it's funny, Ace, you turned me on to William Boyle's work a number of years ago. He was there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Bill is a great example that Bill is not writing about. He is from Brooklyn. He is definitely a very Brooklyn writer. His stuff is intertwined in that community, but he has a very dark, noirish worldview, but also a very funny worldview. I can't say enough. People listening to this, if they want one book to recommend, I would say check out William Boyle. I mean, his stuff is just fantastic. It's dark, it's tragic, but it's also very funny.
There's humor in there.
That's a hard thing to balance all those different feelings, and he does it.
And there's emotional depth. My wife is a writer, and she has her first novel was straight noir. It's called Sunset City, set in Houston, where she grew up. Drugs and porn. I had high hopes
based on your life.
I had high hopes for the research, but it didn't work out the way I imagined. And then her new book, it just came out last March. So it's set in New Orleans and deals with the past and its effects on the current.
And I will do one better, and I'm not saying this because I'm sitting next to Chris or whatever. I think it's one of the best books I've read all year. I think it's just fantastic. It's called The House Uptown. And for people who want to read about New Orleans, talk about tropes and cliches and whatever, there was a tremendous amount of writers post-Katrina that were not of that area that just got everything wrong. Some really lousy books. But I mean, Melissa grew up going to New Orleans. Her people live there. That's what, and it is one of the best New Orleans books that I've ever read. I think it's just fantastic, and I can't say enough about it. So
me neither.
Yeah.
What's Melissa's last name?
Ginsburg, like the
I've heard about. Yep.
Not the poet.
Not the poet. Well, Ace, it's funny. We we've been friends for a long, long time now. And Chris, I'm sure you know Ace's first book dealt with Robert Johnson, and we've been talking about music for decades now. Can you tell us a little bit about the music that's featured in this this particular book?
Sure. I mean, usually for the Quinn Coulson books, I've got a playlist of what I call classic country, and I go to Waylon Jennings and Charlie Pride and Johnny Paycheck, and that's the stuff that I love, and that's the stuff I grew up with. And I think that we would both agree the stuff that's now on country music radio is absolutely horrific. I cannot listen to modern country music. I don't think it is country music. And so, but anyway, that's been the soundtrack for the last several years. But for this book, I would say the soundtrack is probably late 80s, early 90s hair rock and stuff that I knew, back in high school. And so TJ Bird, who is 17 years old, she really hero worships her father, and her father died in an accident or supposed accident, and she really wants to touch base with her father. And her father would be my age. I mean, he would be my age. And her father, his name's Jerry Jeff Bird, was the kind of guy that would drive around on the square in a Monte Carlo SS with his cassettes full of Poison and Bon Jovi and Cheap Trick, and she inherited all this crap. It is still, I actually have more of an appreciation for it, but that's how she communes with her father who was killed. And so it was really a way for me to write about, I always say, write what you know. It was really about the soundtrack of my high school days. Jerry Jeff was certainly one of those guys who was a rock star in his mind, but I had a ball kind of getting back to music that I did not like when I was in high school. Yeah. It was not the music that I liked and I kind of made fun of, but now I listen to it and I think, well, damn, that was really good. I really liked it. I like Poison. I would totally make fun of Poison, back in the 80s. And I go, wow, those guys are great. So yeah, that was the soundtrack for the Heathens.
I don't know if I can go that far with you to say that Poison's great, but it is.
I don't know, Patrick. Compared to what we have now with Post Malone, I would take Poison any day.
Well, it is interesting how different times of your life, different music just seems to sound right. 10 years ago, I might not have listened to this, or that is interesting.
Well, I mean, just on a very very quickly in the the early 90s, I was completely turned off by what was popular music, and I hated listening to popular music. I didn't listen to radio. I didn't give a crap. I mean, I was listening to blues and old school soul, and I mean that's what drove my life. That's all I listened to. But I missed Nirvana. I knew Nirvana was happening, but I didn't realize this era that was coming out that was just incredible. Luckily I started listening to popular music again in the 2000s with like the White Stripes, but pretty much at some point in the late 80s where you had the CNC Music Factory and Marky Mark, I mean, it was just like, I'm not listening to this crap anymore. So but yeah, I've gone back to listen to music of my high school years, and I have a more of a generous appreciation for it.
Have you guys, has either of you seen the Summer of Soul, that documentary?
Yeah, I can't wait. It's playing here in town. Maybe we'll go to the movie.
Yeah. Let's go now.
Sometimes Chris and I actually, there's not a hell, we enjoy going places and hanging out. We'll maybe check it out in the movie.
We'll go to the movie in the middle of the day at a spur of the moment sometimes, and be the only people in the theater.
That's the great part of being a writer, isn't it? Is the fact that you can call up one of your buddies and say, hey, let's go to the movies, and it could be 2:00 in the afternoon, and let's go to the movies.
And we can make it, and it's cheap.
Yeah, that's it.
Head over to Denny's afterwards for the early bird special.
I wish we had a Denny's. We don't have a Denny's. Yeah.
No, Ace, you guys are going to love the movie. I mean, the footage is just incredible that they've.
I know all about it, and there's a music. That's the other thing here in Oxford. We're very fortunate to have is we have incredible musicians and nationally known musicians who play here. And a good friend of mine, Tyler Keith, Tyler, one of just an outstanding garage band, punk rock edge, just fantastic, very just an incredible performer. He just saw it and he said it was one of the best things he's seen all year. So I can't wait.
Yeah, I mean, just from Nina Simone, the footage, and 19-year-old Stevie Wonder, just complete genius.
Yeah.
Sly and the Family Stone, and
The best.
I'm eager to see it, man.
Yes.
yeah, and they have just these tight close-ups of like Mahalia Jackson and Mavis Staples. It's something else.
Well, I can't wait.
I listened to soul when I was a kid. There was one radio station in the hills of Kentucky, and it was on everywhere. So if you were driving to town, my mother would be driving us to town and have the radio on, and it'd just play country music.
Yeah.
And then you stop and go to the store, grocery store, it's playing. You get out, get in the car, and you go to the hardware store, it's playing there. And I could only hear I got sick of it, of course. I could only hear anything else, soul and the Motown sound, at late at night on my little tiny radio in the attic. There was a station out of Chicago called WLS. And I would stay up and listen right on top of the radio to hear this kind of music you're talking about.
Best.
It was fantastic. Then I eventually returned to country western with the outlaw country movement was what drew me back in.
What do you listen to these days, Chris? Are you all over the place?
I listen to the Tibetan singing bowls on
This is true.
on repeat.
Yeah.
I love jazz. I love the classic jazz. I love Bob Dylan, and I love the Clash.
Oh my gosh.
And that's
Oh,
it.
man.
Like, I mean, those are my favorites right there. And then
And of course, you love Post Malone. You talked to me about the
I
other
don't know
day.
who Post Malone is. Is that a person or a band?
It's a construction project. I think that's what it is.
Okay, no, I don't.
The Clash. Wow, that's London Calling was one of the first
My
albums.
favorite band.
No,
It's one of the first albums I bought with my own money. I remember. Still
First thing,
listen to it.
Patrick, the first thing I ever bought with my own money was Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, I Love Rock and Roll.
I
Is
love
right?
that.
Yeah. Joan Jett doesn't get much better.
We could sing. Why don't we sing our way out? We'll sing that song.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to go get a beer and I'm going to let Chris sing us out to Crimson.
I love
Crimson
rock
Close.
and roll. Put another nickel. Is it a nickel? Was it
It's
a
a
nickel?
dime. It's a dime, Chris.
Time in the jukebox.
Nick?
It's inflation.
A nickel in the jukebox, baby.
Well, gentlemen, it's been a lot of fun talking with you both. And thanks for enduring some of my questions.
Any others from the feed or whatever it's called? We get everybody?
Yeah, I'm just looking to see here. Yeah, Debbie, she just asked a question about, you were talking about all the writers in Oxford. Do you go to each other to talk at all about your work? Or is that something you don't talk about?
I don't think we ever talk about work. I think that more than anything, we talk about, honestly, and again, I think we all love movies. We talk about movies and TV shows and, what we're watching. I mean, Chris and I are talking here a lot about Southern fiction and Kentucky and Mississippi and all that stuff, but we talk probably mainly about espionage books and spy movies of the 60s and things like that. So I think there's a very diverse group of interest here.
I don't know if the writers that I've known, and I've known quite a few over the years, none of them ever talked about their work with another writer, other than something like Ace can say, I say, how's it going? He'll say, I had a great day at work. And that's enough, because I know what that means. Or he can say to me, you get some work done. And I say, man, I've got myself in a corner and it's horrible. And that's it, because Ace knows what that means, and that you can't really talk about it beyond that.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've all read, we're big readers. So what's there to talk about a book other than occasionally to recommend a book from the 50s or the 60s that maybe one of us hasn't read.
Sure.
But yeah, we talk about these more. And
Now you're
TV.
talking.
I talk
I'd love
about
to-
spy novels all the time, but no one I know likes to read espionage novels but me.
No, I love the espionage novels.
Okay, except Ace.
Yeah, we
But we
always
don't
trade.
talk about it.
We always trade obscure recommendations, forgotten books and things like that. Can you think of anything that you really like that you're reading now that you'd recommend?
I mean, Dead City by Shane Stevens is one of my favorites. It's out of print. I just read Ted Lewis, a British writer, he wrote in 1970, managed to drink himself to death by age 45, that shows commitment.
It was Get Carter.
What?
Get Carter, right?
Yeah,
And
that was the movie based on the novel called, I think,
oh yeah,
Get Carter Goes Home.
Somebody's
not a great
returned.
novel.
Right.
Young Michael Caine. See, now this is what we talk about.
Yeah, sure.
You know?
Absolutely. Yeah. Films and books. And, I always talk about this book. I mean, I don't think this is really a hidden secret. I think people like you that are really into noir and crime books, but like, Elliot Chase and Black Wings Has My Angel. That's like a,
absolutely
terrific, noir with some Mississippi roots. And so, yeah, it's a joy to find these books that, are kind of, put in obscurity, that they have not had the shelf life of, Raymond Chandler or Jim Thompson. And so it's a fun thing when you discover those writers.
That was his only book, I think.
He wrote a couple. But that was really the only one that was straight noir.
Yeah.
He did some other stuff.
Good.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Roadhouse and the old time Roadhouse.
Yeah.
And all. But I had not heard of him until I moved here, and then I heard about. I don't remember. Maybe you recommended, or maybe Bill.
So, yeah.
Bill Boyle. He's pretty.
Oh, Bill
he's
is. Have you had the pleasure of talking to Bill on Zoom?
No,
or
never have.
He has a book coming out in November.
Yeah, I know.
So you should have Bill on and talk to him. And he has all that stuff collected. He is truly a connoisseur of crime fiction going way back.
He might be the most well read of all of us, but which is one thing. Although I've had more time to read. But the thing about him is he remembers it all.
Yeah.
He's got this information at his fingertips.
Yeah, I can't remember.
That's like an archival librarian.
He's seen every movie too, it seems.
Yeah.
Do you know who else was like that? William Gay.
I've heard that.
Yeah, William Gay, he could remember. I never met anybody who could quote passages. I remember one night over here, sorry you can't see this, over the bar, and talking to him about All the King's Men. And he quoted a paragraph or two from the text, and he could quote Chandler, and he could quote John D. McDonald, and he had an amazing recall.
Yeah,
I don't have that. It is a gift. I don't have that.
No,
Chris, have you come across a British writer named Patrick Hamilton? You ever read his stuff? I really have been on a Hamilton kick lately.
Yeah, I think he's underappreciated, and I don't know if he's even read. Are they reprinted in this country, or did you have to get British?
There have been a couple of them, Hangover Square, of course, and it's funny how, that term gaslighting has entered into everybody's, and they don't realize that it comes from him, Patrick Hamilton. Slaves of Solitude, and there have been a couple that have been reprinted. And Derek Raymond would be another guy along the same line.
Read Derek Raymond. I love the reprint houses. In fact, I always wanted to start a reprint house. We were talking about this the other night after your event. Like every writer in town has this same dream of starting a reprint house. But A, it's a lot of work, and B, we would.
I think every writer has a dream and an idea that will never make money.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, that's I have a lot of those.
We have a lot of great, very creative ideas, but none of them that will be profitable.
I have this idea recently for a drone that has brushes attached on the blades, and so you could get spider webs and dust down from high ceilings.
Watch, Chris. He's gonna.
I like that. That's actually
idea. Yeah.
She seems pretty.
That's like
Yeah, can you cut that?
That's like the in-air Roomba flying around up by your ceiling.
Well, it is. That's what gave me the idea.
Yeah, you guys should talk about this. Somebody's listening right now.
Somebody's going to do it.
They're going to patent this. Be careful.
Well, so the conversation.
Something called duct tape. I don't know whatever happened to it. So I think that.
Yeah, but it was actually tape made of ducks. Yeah. So it was that was a bad idea.
It must be 8 o'clock.
All right.
Can you hear the bell?
Yeah, I can.
8 o'clock.
So Ace, can you tell us just a little bit about what we can expect from the Parker that you have coming out this fall?
Sure. Yeah. So I am working on my 10th Spencer book. It'll be the 50th overall. And it's a lot about politics today. It's about a lot about the division. It's a lot about how I've been, unfortunately, or fortunately for the novel, but unfortunately seeing about the rise of hate groups in this country and seeing the incredible danger within this country as opposed to what people think about terrorism, but the rise of domestic terrorists and things that we saw pre-Oklahoma City, and it took an Oklahoma City event to shut it down. And so I hope it's within the lines of what Robert Parker used to write about, which is important social commentary for these times. But it's all around us, man, and I hate it, but it is something to discuss. We can't pretend it's not here.
I mean, something like that novel will have a wide audience for it, and I think that's really good.
And it might make people very angry, or it might make people think, but we'll see. That's what I have to, hats off to Robert Parker. He brought up a lot of hot button political issues in the 70s and 80s and things that you did not talk about in crime fiction. And it always makes me laugh when I hear from people that say, oh, Robert Parker would never write about anything controversial or edgy or whatever. And they forget books like, Looking for Rachel Wallace that were just groundbreaking for the time. So so that's what I'm looking at.
Any update on the Coulson TV project?
It's, continual development, discussion, I'm actually working on something else right now that is I think pandemic affected a lot of things. It shut down production, and then when production started opening back up, there was both a log jam and a reappraisal. But now I'm working on something, believe it or not, Patrick, goes back to my Nick Travers books. And so I've been working on this script, about Nick Travers, and it's a period piece set in the late 90s. And I've gotten so old as a writer now that my first novel is now a period piece. So that's where we are.
Wow. Now, Chris, have you sold the TV or film rights for this, The Killing Hills?
Nope. No, there's some sniffing around, but the Hollywood sniffing around is something that can go on forever and then stop. But the second book in this series will be out next June, and then there'll be a third one afterwards. Yeah, in quarantine, I just wrote 3 of them. Same place, same characters. A little more time has passed,
Wow.
So
I think in some ways quarantine was beneficial for a writer because there were no distractions. Did you find that? Or
I hate to say there's anything beneficial about COVID. I think that writers we were well suited already to the quarantine that was incredibly difficult for most people. I mean, I live out in the country, the kids are out of the house, so I wasn't under the stress of people who live in the city with a toddler, for example, or anything else. So, but I think writers were well suited to it.
Sure.
I didn't mind not leaving the house. In fact, I resent this.
Yeah.
I mean, that
was the first thing I said. I said, Chris, let's do an event together or Zoom, and he said, I resent that.
Yeah,
I resent being part of it. And I was like, how could you not?
Well, $1,200. That's why I'm here.
That's all you get. It's been Venmo. That's all you get.
Yep, Venmo.
Well, that's really great to hear. I'm glad you've written a couple more. Look forward to reading them. I'll let you guys go, but thanks so much for being such good sports. And here are the 2 books.
Oh yeah.
And Patrick, thank you. Chris and I do a million of these things, and it's always a joy to talk to you because you're always so prepared. You've read the books, you're interested, and that does not happen all the time. So it's always great hanging out with you.
Well, hey, I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. And you guys have a great.
You're in person. We'll be out there together.
By the way, before I sign off, the ghost, we're talking about the ghost of Faulkner kind of on that town. Has either of you read any of William Faulkner's brother John's gold medal paperbacks?
No.
And I actually have them. I have some of those pulp books, from that period, but I have not read them, but they're on the list. They're on the list. Have you read them?
Yeah, I've read a couple of them. Yeah. Uncle Good's Girls is one of them. And
that's going to be held to be William Faulkner's brother. You're never getting ahead. You're screwed.
That book, My Brother Bill, that he wrote. was good. I really enjoyed it.
He's still here. He's still with us.
I mean,
It is impossible. I mean, it's not being, trying to overplay the fact that you can't live here and not, be connected to that world. It's impossible.
no, it's you can read his book and sit here and look at the very building that he was describing in a
No,
novel.
I mean, just a second ago, where we're sitting here, we hear the chimes coming off the clock tower here. I mean, that's about as Faulknerian as you get. That's
There's
Sound
an
and
old
Fury.
train station here that is now converted to sort of a meeting hall where they have readings and whatnot. And it's the one that the woman in Sanctuary went to take the train up to Memphis. So that's all around us. The town, though, accepts writers in a way. It's a small town, 25,000 people or so, maybe 30,000 people. Accepts writers in a way that most small towns don't. And I think it's because of Faulkner. And they felt guilty because they didn't like him. And then suddenly they shot Intruders in the Dust right here. And
if
they
you
thought, oh, Faulkner.
Yeah, and if you watch that film, which is great, from 48, 49, it looks pretty much the same. I mean, the building, the balcony, this building, which is built in the 1870s, if you watch Intruder in the Dust from the 1940s, this building is here. You can see what Oxford was like at that time period. But Faulkner was, people forget, he's the guy on the postage stamp. He's the guy that across the street over here has a bronze statue. But he was also a guy that worked at Hollywood for a long time.
Yeah.
He's a guy that wrote an Egyptian.
He collaborated on The Big Sleep with Lee Brackett, science fiction writer.
I mean, he was a working writer. He wrote mysteries. He wrote the Gavin Stevens books, and so people forget about that. But he was a thoroughly entertaining and obviously is just one of the greatest.
Did he write The Blue Dahlia? Was he in on that?
No, that was Chandler.
Was that Chandler? Okay, yeah. Anyway, well, gentlemen, thanks again. Have a great evening. And thanks everybody for watching. And I'll talk to you soon, Ace.
Thanks, man. Thanks, guys.
Bye.